Straight faces, man. Right, come on, guys. Honestly.
There you go.
Right.
And here we are, having come down the road. Hello and welcome to the UWS 2025 Scottish Saltire Tartan Army Talk Show podcast.
Just keep going, just keep going.
I'm your host Robbie Gray, and I'm here joined by the wickedly talented Callum Murphy, the gorgeous Callum Lindsay, and the rip-roaring, never boring Johnny R. So we'll come to you first, Kyle. Let's talk about Steve Clarke. 6 years running, is that too long?
If you look at the Greece games at the weekend there on Thursday and Sunday, you look at their performance on Thursday, you'd think, okay, we've got a victory here, it's a good performance, managed to hold out Greece for the second half, but Sunday's performance was just an absolute abysmal display from Scotland. You know, there was no sense of attacking presence, Greece were all over them, and you know, when they go into half time, they're 2-0 down, it's a time to collect themselves and think, okay, get a goal here and we can get back in the game. But you know, we've seen in the second half it was 15 seconds into the break and Greece were 3-0 up, and I think that over the past year or so since the Euros, I think that's really summed up Steve Clarke's tenure at Scotland. You know, there's been highs and there's been lows. It's been a very up and down time for Steve Clarke.
You talk about those highs there, talking about qualifying for 2 European Championships. I mean, when you talking about the people that that preceded him, I mean, you have to say that he done better in that sense.
Definitely. Like, if we go back to 2019, Scotland were in absolute turmoil. You know, they were off the back of a devastating defeat to Kazakhstan away, and then they only just narrowly beat San Marino, and so that was the end of Alex McLeod's second term as Scotland manager, and so the SFA wanted a new man to lead the Scotland team, bring achievements, and there was only one man that could do that, and that was Steve Clarke. You see his achievements at Kilmarnock, you know, getting them their best finish in how many years, and you know, obviously the campaign never got to the bit. Obviously he had his Euro qualifying campaign, that didn't go well, but he had the playoffs to fall off on, and you know, it led to possibly one of the most memorable moments in Scotland's history, playing Serbia in a penalty shootout, Alexander Mitrovic to step up, and David Marshall becomes a hero, and it's ingrained in all our memories, and that's what made Scotland qualify for their first major tournament in over 20 years. And I think that if we're going to talk about memorable moments in Steve Clarke's reign, that would be one of them, just because you know, everyone's stuck indoors during COVID, and it was something that many people could, you know, be happy about, you know, get a sense of pride and, you know, escape the feeling of being locked inside.
Where do you see Steve Clarke's future with a nation if this form continues, this lack of form, should I say?
I believe that Steve Clarke will probably get the World Cup qualifying campaign, but he did admit to himself before the Greece games that there's a 75% chance of him leaving the Scotland job. And I do believe that if Scotland don't perform well in this qualifying group, then I think it will be the end of Steve Clarke's term. But the question is who replaces him, because there's not really a lot of options that the SFA could go for, not a lot of Scottish options. The only one you could say is maybe David Moyes, but obviously he's currently at Everton and doing a really good job. So it's an interesting situation, but I think right now for Steve Clarke it's just to focus on performing like they did in the last qualifying group when they had Denmark and teams like that, and really showing who they are and try and get in that first place spot, because they've got Denmark, they've got Belarus and they've got Greece. On paper that should be a group that Scotland should win very comfortably, but it depends on what Scotland team's going to turn up.
Absolutely. And our man Johnny R here, the man in the know about the Nations League. What's your kind of overview and reaction to our Nations League campaign so far?
Yeah, well, it's obviously disappointing to move down to League B. I think there's no getting away from that. But our form at the start, if you remember, we lost the first 3 matches albeit quite tight and against good opposition, being Poland, Croatia and Portugal. But then obviously at the turn of last year, November, we obviously had the emergence of Ben Doak. He'd done fantastically for us in those matches, obviously ending with a draw against Portugal, a win against Croatia and a win away to Poland. So it gave us a playoff, although the players obviously couldn't stand up to that, albeit a great result away in Greece, it must be said, on Thursday, albeit a backs the wall performance and really good defensive play. I think Scotland actually had the most shots they'd ever faced with a win, or something similar to that in the last sort of 20 years. So it really does show how much of the better side Greece were. I think what's disappointing is that Greece obviously started the first match poorly, made lots of changes at half time and dominated since then. Scotland had no reaction to that second half away. The same formation. He took Ferguson out, who I thought actually had a good match. Brought Christian, obviously tried something different. A lot of fans are obviously feeling that Kenny McLean should no longer have his spot in the team. He's been a good servant, but when you've got the captain of Bologna on the bench, it's not a great look when a championship player's starting over him, is it? I know Steve Clarke's got his loyalties. I think that's something that's probably stood in his way a wee bit as Scotland manager. So a sobering defeat to end it. It must be said, 3-0 Greece. Obviously, I mean, it could have been 4 or 5. Let's not be around the bush. Going down to League B is not actually the worst, because were we to fail to qualify, it gives us a playoff chance to qualify for other tournaments, which we probably wouldn't get in League A, to be honest. So it's not the worst, but obviously looking ahead, it's all about trying to get the World Cup. Greece are obviously in our group for the World Cup. It's Greece, Denmark and Belarus. First place will go to the World Cup. I don't think many Scotland fans will be too confident of that at the minute. Second place is a playoff, and that's obviously where we're aiming to finish. But we need to overturn Denmark and Greece. So it's not looking great at the minute, but look, if you have Ben Doak back in the squad, maybe Aaron Hickey, some injuries do stand in our way a wee bit. There is every chance that we can get there, and the players just need some confidence. I know we've got friendlies coming up in the summer. It's at home against Iceland and away to Liechtenstein. I don't honestly see them putting us in a good position for the match against Denmark and Greece, because they're not the same calibre of opposition. But look, if we can get wins in those matches, all you can do, it gets confidence in the squad. But yeah, a difficult week for Scotland and a couple of months to think about it now.
Absolutely. You mentioned there we've got players like Aaron Hickey, Lewis Ferguson, some that you didn't mention, McTominay, Gilmore. Yeah. Some standout players in a great league like Serie A. When you think we have players like that, we should be performing better. Do you think, can you think of a time where we had players as high calibre as that in the Scotland squad?
Well, not in my lifetime, certainly. If you go back to, the last, maybe the 80s or 90s, you would, but it's certainly in the 21st century, it's the best squad we've had. That's probably why we've made 2 European Championships. I think the squad is no doubt it's an ageing squad now, but I think these players will still, still get 2 or 3 years out of the core of the team. Of course, players playing away in Serie A, it's something that's happened in the last couple of years. I think it's great. It's a good league, good standard. But if you look at the Greece team and you look at our team on paper, I think we've got better players. So I don't know whether that's tactics. I know a lot of people criticise Steve Clarke, sometimes I think unfairly, but he definitely got it wrong last week. There's no doubt about that. I do think he's maybe too loyal sometimes. You saw Hanley playing, he's not played at all really for his side at club level. I think the difficulty as a national team is you use what you've got available to you at the time. But I think Steve Clarke, in fairness to him, he's brought in some young players. I know Callum's going to touch on that, but are they getting the action? Are they getting the minutes? Not at the minute. So he does need to freshen his squad, certainly for these qualifiers coming up.
Absolutely. And I think it would be fair to say that none of us would mind if Grant Hanley never touched the Scotland squad ever again.
Well, I don't know. I think that's a bit harsh. He played quite well in the first leg, but it's those kind of players that we need, young blood and new players, but unfortunately at the minute they're not available. You mentioned there young blood, and I'll move over to the man that's down with the youth, Callum. So talk to me about the kind of young talent of the Scotland squad.
Well, I hold sort of a more conservative opinion on how talented this squad we actually have is. I don't know if you disagree with me, and I kind of hope you do for the sake of the national team, but I don't think the youth talent we've got coming through is actually as exciting and promising that the Scotland fans sort of want to make out. Of course, we've got Lennon Miller, we've got Aaron Hickey, Lewis Ferguson, players who are great, but when you compare them to the sort of the core midfield that Clark's had through his tenure, the McGinn, the McGregor, the McTominay, I don't see Lennon Miller becoming a better player than McTominay. And then for them again, we've got Conor Barron, David Watson. They're not getting close to McGinn, so I don't know. I don't think it is as promising or as hopeful as we'd love it to be.
I don't think that's actually crazy to say. And I think also what you touched on there slightly, if Scotland were fielding a team of 11 centre mids, would be fine. But there's a bit of a positional discourse, would you agree?
Yeah, and I think that comes back to, with this young talent we're bringing through right now, we're still struggling with the defence and the goalkeepers. Like we see Craig Gordon's at an age now where he should sort of be kicking his feet up in the house, watching Tina Park sits in the telly, and we're still relying on him to be our starting goalkeeper for our national team. And I know we had Max Johnson, obviously young boy coming through, played for Motherwell, in this squad. And I think Clark should have probably given him a bit more time, but chucked him on in the first leg, the 94th minute, and I think that's... I don't know what that's to do, because it's obviously not to make him a better player. I don't know if it's like to say he gave him his first cap, whatever, but like when you've got defenders coming through and your defence isn't great, we need to fire them in, man. We need to just give them a chance.
For sure. And you speak about chances or lack thereof. Do you think at the kind of higher echelon of Scottish teams there's a kind of lack of youth development at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've seen the way the Scottish Premiership's played out this season, that the two biggest teams sort of, obviously Celtic's still in the cup, but they've sort of got nothing really to play for at the moment. And we're still not seeing that these Scottish players brought through at all. We've got some playing for Rangers. You get Billy Rice, Finlay Curtis, and then obviously Jude Bonner came on for Celtic not that long ago. But when Celtic are so far ahead of second and Rangers are so far ahead of third, these players should sort of be playing. We're playing every week now, I think. No,
Absolutely.
they're obviously not.
I agree with you. So there's now the section where we open the floor to just shooting the proverbial chat at each other.
I think just on that point about young players not playing in the Premiership, I think I read that Motherwell have got the most under 21 involvement, and it's like 15% of their team, and that is literally Lennon Miller.
Yeah.
Maybe one other player. There's not much going on there. It does sort of. It's a wider question, probably not to be talked about today, about the league set-up system in Scotland, if that's hampering youth development. Obviously, you've only got 12 teams. It's very competitive. The squad, the structure doesn't really lend itself to giving youth a chance. So that's a point as well. But it's something to be said. But I think, like, for now, for Scotland, they need to use these two friendlies to really give the youth a chance and see what they can do, because if they play well in those games, you could see a fresher squad for the World Cup qualifiers. I think that's what we all want to see.
Yeah, and Lennon Miller gets talked about so much as this like messiah, but like Callum said, he's not. Probably, we don't know obviously, but is he going to be as good as McTominay, Gilmore, Ferguson, and who else is there?
Well, we don't know, but he's doing well. He can't stand in his ways. What is he? 18. Playing every week for Motherwell. He can't do any better really. There's no doubt he's going to move to a bigger team in the summer. I think that's fair to say. I think Motherwell have done well to hold on to him to this point. But I think 3-0 down, you could have put him on the pitch.
Yeah.
Do you think Lennon Miller, say he does get that big move in the summer, say he signs for Celtic, he's linked with Borussia Dortmund, which is crazy. He signs for them, he's going to automatically become a starter, I think, not a starter, but he'll automatically be trusted to play for Scotland, I think.
Yeah.
Just as soon as he's playing for that sort of bigger
Well,
club.
if he's actually playing week in, week out. But there is selection headaches in the middle of the park.
For both the old
We've
firm
actually
teams.
We've got really good centre mids at Scotland, don't we? It's just the other positions is the issue. It'll be hard for Lennon Miller to break into that. But like you say, it's an aging squad, so you need to bed them in early, get them used to it, and then when he is right to take over, he could. And I don't want to let put a damper on Kenny McLean again. But it's those kind of players that the fans don't want to see in the squad anymore.
And then the striker problem. Obviously, we've juggled strikers, different selections for years. Do you think James Wilson of Hearts could be a potential selection come 4 or 5 years down the line?
He's definitely an option that Scotland could look at in the future, but Scotland can't be relying on a 17-year-old striker to carry them through a qualification group. You've got strikers like Che Adams, Dykes, Shankland, all experienced strikers, but you can't get anything out of them. And the problem I think is with the strikers is whenever you play a certain striker, Scotland will play the exact opposite way of playing football. I'll show you an example. When we played Germany in the opening game, we played Che Adams up front, and all we done was just play long balls. And if there's one man that's perfect for that type of football, it's Lyndon Dykes. Because he's tall, he's quite big, he'll shield it up and bring the ball down. But see if Scotland's want to play on the ground football, play one touch, Che Adams is your perfect man. So it's about Steve Clarke trying to find, okay, who are the best players for the way I want to play against a certain team.
Stevie Lawrence Shankland, I think he could he plays both styles of that football for Hearts.
Yeah.
Sort of maybe try. I know he's not set the world alight when he's played for us, but maybe just give him a shot, a consistent run of games.
Yeah, but I think Shankland's been given his chance, and that was when he was scoring every week for Hearts.
Yeah,
and he's not doing that anymore. Obviously, they brought in Hurst, which is another conversation that he done nothing over the 2 games. Although he only came on off the bench for what half an hour both matches. Didn't really have much support. Obviously, it was a back-to-all performance for both of the periods that he was on. So I think there's still more to be seen from him. I'd like to see him start a match for Scotland as well, but he's not playing regularly in the Premier League, is he? He's more of an impact sub, isn't he, at Ipswich? So it's but they are looking at other strikers. I think there is a chance for Wilson though to try and get in there. I think he's quite fortunate the period he finds himself in that Scotland don't really have a focal point up top. But it's certainly a problem position.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hypothesise about what Shankland could be doing in this Scotland squad that lacks that hole at striker if he was playing with the same form he played with last season.
I think one of the main reasons why you can see Shankland dropping in form is he's playing a different position at Hearts now. Since Neil Critchley's came in, he's been moved into that number 10 position. There's not really been an out-and-out striker. So that's maybe been the cause of why he's not been scoring as many goals. So if Steve Clarke was to look at how Shankland's playing and maybe implement that in his squad, maybe we might see the benefits of that for strikers up front. But at the same time, we know what Shankland can do up front, and he hasn't been doing that for Scotland. So it is a tricky situation.
Absolutely.
I think another point is that Ben Doak, when he played in the team, we had more on the wings. We had sort of a dynamo on the wings that could actually make things happen himself. Whereas you look at the match against Greece, there was 5 centre mids on the pitch. There was no width, no creativity. It was just sort of creating half chances. I think we need that, but the only issue is we've only got one good winger when Ben Doak plays. But again, that's just national team football for you. But I think they need to find a way around that, and Ben Doak can be a really key player in the World Cup qualifying.
When you say one winger there, does the veteran presence of Jamesy Forrest not come into play when talking about wingers?
Nah, I think he's gotten. I think he's been unlucky this season. He's been injured for a large part of it, and when he's came on for Celtic, he's done a decent job off the bench, and he does what he's asked of. But I think his time in the Scotland team is it's like with Grant Hanley, Ken McLean, all these players in that age range should be thinking, okay, I should maybe be focusing more on club football rather than international football, and giving people who have got more prospects than me a better chance in the team.
Absolutely. Well, folks, it means so much more this time when I say that's all we have. Although the journey has to come to an end, let the feeling of sadness that it's over be felt as unspent love. This has been the Scottish Saltire Tartan Army Talk Show podcast, and I've been your host, Robbie Gray. Thank you and good night.